Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome to Trend Micro's Managing Family Life Online webinar series. I am Lynette Owens. I'll be hosting our session today, and I'm really excited to have with us Jill McClenahan and Julie Kohler of Microsoft, as well as Krista Lambert, who will be our sign language interpreter for today. And before we get started, I want to encourage all of you to submit your questions at any time using the Q&A function. We will get to them towards the end of the session. And also, I'd like to ask a couple of questions before we get started, so I encourage you to use the polling function that you'll see coming up in front of you in a minute here. So the first question is, which one of these describes your family best? My kids love playing games online, but I do not. I enjoy online gaming with my kids. I game more than my kids do, and my kids don't play online games yet. So if you would go ahead and use the polling function that you see in front of you. Tell us which one of these describes your family best. I would probably say definitely not C. I do not game more than my kids do. But I was definitely a fan of gaming at some point in my life, more in the 1980s. All right, great. It looks like a majority of you have kids who love it, but don't love it yourselves. And that is, that's probably pretty common. I think that's probably not atypical of most parents' experiences, especially in this last 6 months. And another question for you, what worries you most about your kids in online gaming? Is it that they're on it too much? You're worried about the content itself, it's too violent or not age appropriate. They might be playing with people you don't know, they don't know, and you don't know. Or they're spending too much money playing them. So which one of these, again, use the polling function and let us know which one of these issues concerns you the most when it comes to your kids and online games. Again, I think asking this question in the middle of a pandemic is probably swaying the responses a bit, but you know, I think, and it's no surprise, looks like most of you are concerned about screen time, the amount of screen time that they're spending, followed closely by, you know, violence or the age inappropriateness of the content, and strangers playing with people they don't know. So thank you for that. You know, I think just to set the stage about online gaming, I think there was some really, really interesting things that happened, especially in the first earlier part of 2020, but certainly even up to now. And this study was done by NPD and released in July of this year, but you know, there's a good number of people from the US, the study was focused in the US, that play video games. It's about 244 million people playing video games. Obviously, many of those are children. And that 32% of those are considered moderate gamers. So the amount of time they're playing is anywhere from 5 to 15 hours a week. But this was a big record, which again is probably no surprise, that in the first quarter of this year, spending on games went up to 10.86 billion. That's just a massive number. And most of that money was towards video gaming content. The rest was hardware like the consoles or devices, or accessories like headphones and so on. So that's not a surprise, I think, in the middle of a pandemic. But the other thing that I think is what we heard and what we knew and what we have researched is that gaming also provided kids as well as adults a way of connection. especially during this time. And it was a solution for some to the feelings of isolation when you could just not play outside with your friends or be at their homes. The other thing we also saw, and maybe some of us on this call experienced firsthand, is that gaming provided a distraction for our kids and a way for them not to interrupt those of us who then were also dealing with our own transition, and that was working from home. And so I think all of these dynamics are one of many characteristics that have made 2020 unique. It's also made the dynamics with regard to kids and gaming very unique. And I'm looking forward to our conversation today with Jill and Julie to talk more about this. I'd like to just finally remind everybody that as part of our series, we have a number of resources available to you on our internet, on our website at internetsafety.trendmicro.com. But we have a specific area for kids and online gaming that I'd encourage you to take a look at. We're really grateful to Jill and Julie today, who are going to show us and share with us some additional resources specific to the Microsoft Xbox, and we will be adding those to our website after today's call as well. And so this is just a screenshot of one of those resources on our site. So I'm going to ask our panelists to join me on screen. So Jill and Julie, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us today. I just want to check in with how you're doing. How has the last 6 months been for you? And more generally, how did Microsoft accommodate you to work from home? I assume you worked from home from the moment the lockdown began.
Yes. Yeah, even before the kids got out of school. So I'll start with sharing my experience and then switch it over to Julie. And I just want to say how happy we are to be here and to have this opportunity to also share and help educate parents, because as a parent, I have 3 kids that range from the age of 8 to almost 14. And it's been a huge transition, starting from when we got sent home from work I think we got a day's notice that, grab what you need and we're going to start working from home. And then a couple weeks later, I think it was 2 weeks later, the kids then were constantly working from home. And I feel it was nice for me to kind of transition into working from home before the kids started being home full time. But it was really hard for me to stay motivated because there was so much information and everything was so new. And, we still had, work priorities, but there was also this personal priority now of, wow, we need to learn about what's going on. We need to prepare ourselves for when the kids do come home. So balancing that motivation of, hey, I really have to work and I really need to take care of the personal side was difficult. And then when the kids did come home, I actually think it's funny. Now my daughter is crying to go back to work or back to school. She's like, as soon as school opens up, you guys can't keep me home, I'm going. But for that first couple of weeks when some parents were keeping their kids home before school made the official announcement, she was the opposite of, all my friends get to stay home. Why don't I get to stay home? And I thought that's an interesting, shift of mentality of, you're really missing school. I know it's a social aspect you're really missing, but you are missing that. But anyway, so when they did transition to coming home, it was a lot of tears, a lot of helping keep them motivated, keep us motivated, finding out what worked for the kids as well as us of timing. I'm lucky enough to have my husband home as well, so we were able to kind of conquer and divide with the 3 kids. And we also had to upgrade our internet. We just had the basic, what would meet the basic demands for having 1, maybe 2 people home. And now we've got, a family of 5, all online, all streaming. At one point we, are all either on Zoom or Teams at the same time. And I think it was the first week of all of us being home, we had to call it upgrade that. So that was an interesting shift. And then I would say transition to summer was nice because everybody got to kind of have a breather, and we actually got to force them outside more because, as we're going to talk, they're constantly online, and their gaming usage went up huge, as well as just even Skype and FaceTime and all of the other screens that they've got. But we were able to go do a lot of camping and try to safely get them outside with their friends and following the rules as best we could. But now that's all shifted back into school. But I think it's easier because everybody had time to prepare. They know what they need to do now. The teachers have a way better handle than they did last spring because everybody's just thrown into chaos. And for us, at least, it's going pretty smooth.
That's great.
Trying to balance work is still tough. I took a week off last week just to make sure I got them all set up. But Microsoft has been super flexible, and they have a lot of benefits that they're giving as for time off and working with your manager and having flexible schedules. Like my schedule is usually I don't hop online until 10 or 11. I'll work until 4:30 or 5, and then I'll just hop on and do some additional stuff at night. And and people are okay with that and understand when you have to jump out. For I got to make lunch, or I got to get them online, or they're having a really hard time with the assignment. People are really, and managers have been very flexible about that.
That's great. Yeah, thank you. And Julie?
Yeah, also echoing what Jill said, thank you very much for having us here today. It's great to have this opportunity to talk to everyone about what we've been doing in the space. From my personal experience, I do not have children, but the past 6 months have been difficult for me and my family as well. I think one of the number one challenges was the space in our house, because we have a very small 2-bedroom house and there weren't 2 offices. There was nowhere for me and my husband to both be working at the same time. So right now he's working in the kitchen and I've been upstairs in our 2nd bedroom, and I'm sharing the space with our 2 guinea pigs who have been okay roommates so far. But it's been challenging, having limited space and limited access to the technology that we used to have, because in the office we had multiple computers and multiple monitors and, just access to anything that you needed at any time. But Microsoft has been very supportive. They've provided us with the equipment that we need, space to do the things that we need to take care of. And then the other personally challenging thing is the distance from my family. I'm not from the Seattle area originally. I'm from Michigan. That's where I grew up and where my family is. And it's been very hard to be so distant from my parents and my nieces and nephews and watching them, kind of grow up from a distance. I have a nephew that's 2 years old, and I've been, trying to stay as connected as I could with him. And I'm so grateful for technology, which enables that more than it used to. But then I have my 16-year-old nephew who likes to send me lots of texts throughout the day, and my 11-year-old niece who will sometimes text me when she's at class, and I have to remind her that she needs to focus. I'll say, what are you doing right now? She's like, oh, I'm in English class. Okay, well, maybe you should focus on that. But I also have a sister-in-law who is a kindergarten educator, and she's doing in-person teaching right now in Michigan. And so I've been staying connected with her about the challenges that she's faced. And it's really hard for those kindergartners to understand these new rules in the world. Wearing a mask every day as part of the classroom and staying separate from their classmates. And so I've been able to hear from the perspective of an educator all of the challenges that they've faced this year, and I really feel for them. And I'm a former educator myself as well. I used to teach elementary school, 3rd and 4th grade. And so I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to work on a product like this with that background that I have.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I think a lot of people listening would probably echo the experiences you've shared. So in one sense, at least it's been collective, as lonely as it has been and as isolating as it can feel sometimes. I with regard to what happened over the last 6 months, I'd also really love to hear about what you saw happening with the platform and the products you work with. Was there anything that happened, trends or challenges that arose because of COVID-19? as people began to use the Xbox a lot more? Were you seeing any new opportunities as well as challenges arising over the last, I guess, 6 months?
Yeah, yeah, we definitely saw a huge uptick in usage, and I'm really happy that people are finding the platform. And I know it's been a common theme among our leaders of, we're not just a gaming platform. It's really trying to be connected and to fill the gap of keeping people, connected and entertained in this time of social isolation to varying extents. And with people not being able to physically be together, having the fact that they could just all hop online and either see each other or talk has been huge. As for trends, we did see a large increase, especially in the communications and social, like the multiplayer games. And we've seen a large uptick in our Game Pass. I think we got 130% increase in our Game Pass usage. And I think there's something like 23 million new friendships have formed since last March. And so the friendships on Xbox is, I have a gamer tag, and my friend from class has a gamer tag, and when we mutually connect, that's considered a friendship. Like, I can follow various people, but when we actually mutually connect and have that friendship, then we saw a large explosion of new people finding those friendships.
23 million just in the last 6 months, or up to 23 million?
No, we added over 23 million. So that was a 70% increase. Yeah. And, with the increase in the multi-game usage, it's really that communication. And personally, my daughter was not a gamer before COVID. She actually thought people playing Xbox were, not great and not cool. But then they quickly got tired of FaceTiming. They ran out of things to talk about because they don't see each other all the time. So, but then they transitioned to playing Fortnite and Minecraft. And all of a sudden it wasn't, we're trying to look at each other. It's like they were cooperating and they were playing. And that's the social connection trends I think we've been seeing is, they've been trying to do cooperative playing as well.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, I think that's kind of the main trends that we've seen.
Okay. Well, and you bring up a very good point, and that is that people often separate social media from gaming, when in fact, almost all new games have a social element. Gaming is social, and they're not, in fact, different things. I mean, I think, like you said, gaming gives you something to do together versus just communicating. But it is, in fact, social. And with that, it brings the same kinds of challenges that happen on platforms like Snapchat or Instagram or TikTok or Facebook. So are there specific things that, issues that arose because of that increase in friendships, in social connections? Were there specific, areas of concern that also started to rise because over this last 6 months?
So I would say we've seen, from being on the safety team, with the increased usage, we've seen, increased reports, but nothing that has really spiked to show that there's any specific trend of any particular issue going on. We tend to see spikes more around like larger national social events, that type of thing. But what we have seen that's actually impacted us is, in the different usage scenarios, we've seen opportunities that we can contribute more to responsible gaming, areas that we are actively investing in, and we're doing a combination of AI and human moderators to proactively block content that we deem toxic to our communities. And for things that are, getting through any proactive blocking or filtering that we might have, we've got a good workforce behind us helping, go through things that are user reported and figuring out, do they really, are they really against our code of conduct or are they not? But I think we haven't necessarily seen any big spikes, but we've seen the opportunity of, the more we could just keep off our platform to begin with, the less we need to reactively worry about it. And if people don't see it, it's going to be less impactful and less harmful to our gamers. And that's really what we're focusing on.
Yeah, and we're talking about things like bullying or I guess, I don't know, is there spam issues? What are the kinds of things you do see when you do see them?
Yep. So actually, we did a big effort around spam. About in the same. We haven't seen an increase in spam per se from COVID, but we have seen big spikes in spam, and there are people that really focus on patterns and behaviors and try to identify people who are doing that. And we've seen that. I specifically myself haven't seen any trend data around bullying or that, but we do have. I'll take a step back. We actually do have a feature that we'll show in just a little bit for direct messaging when it comes to your Xbox Live platform, where you can actually filter the content between your friends and from people outside that aren't your friends, that help with some of that getting unwanted, unsolicited messages. That can cut down on the spam, that could cut down on some of the just online bullying of, I played a game with this person, they don't know me, they send me a message. You're not going to see that right away. You have to go search for that.
Okay.
And we have put in like filtering capabilities. So like from a text perspective, we're starting to really address some of those areas.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I think, Julie, reflecting back on to some of the surveys the poll that we did at the beginning of this session, in addition to content and interactions that people are concerned about, screen time really was the top. It actually was before COVID. I think it maybe dipped during the summer simply because kids didn't have other things anyway. But now that kids are back in school, you can see families starting to try and recalibrate. How do I make sure that you're not spending so much time online because you have to spend time online for school? And that's just too much screens, too much screen time for you at your age. What are some of the things that families can do to manage that issue if their kids are using the Xbox or Xbox Live or any of the Microsoft gaming products?
Yeah. So the project that I've been working on for the past year and a half is the Xbox Family Settings app that is currently in preview right now on iOS and Android, and it's a free application. I highly encourage parents to make sure that their children have appropriately aged accounts. And once you've done that, the app makes it very easy to set up screen time limits for your child based on their age and their specific needs. And so one trend I will call out is we did notice at the beginning of the pandemic when parents were struggling to, take care of their kids while they were also figuring out how to work from home. We saw that they were giving their kids more screen time in those moments because one of the features that the app provides is the ability to have your child request more time when they're out of it. So they're playing on the Xbox, they'll get a notification, you have 5 minutes of screen time remaining, and they have the option to ask the parent for more time. So previously, parents would typically say something around, okay, you can have maybe 30 more minutes of screen time. But the answers that we saw coming in most recently were higher. So we saw people actually allowing them to play for another hour, maybe 2 hours. So we saw them giving them more time while they were struggling to figure out how this whole working from home situation was going to work. Now the kids are back in school and they have their schedules more figured out, like Jill was talking about. Like things just seem a little bit smoother in the fall now because we've had time to adjust. We are seeing parents want to set up, more restrictive screen time schedules. And one of the great things that the app allows you to do is set times of the day that are appropriate for playing. And so if you have a child and you know that they have class between the hours of 12 and 3, you can make sure that they're blocked from playing during that time, and you're confident that they're not going to be doing that instead of doing their class time. And so you can set hours of the day that are okay to play, and within that time range you can say you can play for 1 hour between the hours of 3 and 5. And so it's a really flexible way to set up screen time schedules for your child. And it's one of the things that parents have given us feedback as part of this preview, that this has been the life-saving feature for them. The ability to be able to set these schedules and to be able to manage them from their phone and quickly, so they don't get interrupted. If they're on a call for work, they can just get a quick notification on their phone. Your child wants more screen time. You can say yes or no. You can choose and how much time to give them. And so it's been one of those features that really helps parents improve the relationship with their children and really be in control of, how much screen time they're getting in a given day.
So would it be okay? Could I go ahead and share a screenshot here of that app? It's the because I actually downloaded this in May of this year to give it a try, and I got a little bit sidetracked on some other things, and I really need to employ this because we're back in school. So
Yeah.
Walk us through what are we seeing here?
Sure. So the very first screenshot that you see, that's showing your family setup. So those top 3 boxes are the children in the family, and it gives you a little bit more information about how much screen time they've already used today. And so you can see in this case, the children have played for 3 hours or 2 hours. And then once you click into one of them, so in this case, we pretend that we clicked into Alex, the next screen shows you a high-level overview of Alex's status. And so you see how much screen time they've used today, how much they have allowed, and then where they were spending that. So we also allow you to set limits across Xbox and Windows. You can have a global screen time schedule set up if you want. Maybe your kids are playing games on PC as well, and so that might make sense for you. Or you could just do Xbox. So there's 2 options for setting up screen time. We also, if the very bottom part you can barely see, but that's where the content restrictions show up. And so you can set suitable content restrictions for your kid. Typically, parents will match the age of their child, but sometimes they have a child that's a little bit more mature, and so they want to give them a higher level restriction, or maybe the child is less mature and they want to set it a little bit lower. So this is very customizable, and the child will only be able to play games within that rating system. And so if you would set it to age 10, probably they'll only be playing games that are rated for E, which is everyone, or some games have an additional modifier that'll say something like 10 plus E. And so they would only be allowed to play those ones that were appropriate for their age. And then the next screen is just showing some of the settings that we've surfaced. So we understand, like you were talking about at the beginning of this call and with the survey, that a lot of parents are not gaming parents. They don't play games themselves. They don't understand a lot of the language of some of these settings that might exist on the Xbox today. And so what we did is we purposely made sure that we were using very friendly language to help parents understand what these settings controlled and what they did. And so we talk about, there's this setting that will help you manage online communication. We also provide more information about every setting to give the parent the information that they need to really make the right decision for their child. And so these are all highly customizable, and that's kind of what you see on the right too. Like you can drill into any of these and know more about social. Like, do I want them to play with nobody, friends only, everybody? And then on top of those, you're seeing just a bit more of the activity report. So this gives parents a view into what their child has been doing, what games they've been playing during the day. You can either see a today view, which is what's shown there, or you can see a past week view, which would show you over the past week, this is how they've been using their time and the games they've been playing the most. And so it gives parents that visibility into, how has my child been using the screen time that I've given them? What are they doing most commonly, and what are they doing? So that's just a high level overview of, some of the key features of the app and things that you can do.
Yeah, and thank you for that. I think I encourage, is this something, if you just went to an app store, you would just look for Microsoft Xbox Family app? Is that what I'm looking for, Xbox Family?
It's in preview right now, and so the one for iOS is actually full currently, but it is in the Google Play Store, so you can definitely find it there for Android today.
Okay, that's fantastic. And one thing that I want to encourage parents to consider is that when you use tools like this, or even if you have an Apple device and you get that Sunday morning little notification about how much screen time you spent on the device, this kind of information being up-leveled to us as parents, but even to kids, I think is incredibly empowering. It can also be depressing when you realize that your screen time is up, 50% from the week before. But knowing that information and then sharing it with your children and then having conversations about it, you realize, I might make different choices simply just because I know now. What was I doing on it all that time? And, did I spend enough time doing the other things like schoolwork or exercising or being outside that I should have been doing instead of this? So thank you for that. And I think the other thing that I think would be great for our parents to understand too is what you're showing us is ways to control or to have some way to manage your child's experience on the Xbox itself. But people often confuse the controls within a game itself, and therefore the company who published that game versus what they have control over on the Xbox itself. So I don't know, can you, either of you, speak to how you differentiate between that? Because I know you have standards for your game developer communities, correct?
Yes.
But there are some things that are out of your control that they choose to do or not do within the games. Can you explain the difference between the two for our audience and maybe give an example if you have one?
Sure. So I can take that one to start, and then Julie, if you have stuff to add, you can definitely add on. It is sometimes really difficult to see kind of where the platform ends and the games begin, because there are quite a few settings that will go across as part of the requirements that you had mentioned, like user-generated content. If you want to block that, that's one that, if parents or gamers decide they want to block other people's user-generated content, we want that to not just be the platform, which would be like a gamer picture or maybe some images that you would see in messaging, but also through the game. And I guess from the settings that you're setting on the Xbox or through the Family app, those really will apply to what we call our platform level features, which would be like party chat, it would be messaging, it would be the activity feed that people can see when they first log in and look at their profile. So, when you're at that home screen and you're looking at your social interactions, those are definitely where those settings are taking effect. When it comes to games, we have a baseline, and especially there's a difference of how connected into our ecosystem they are, and the more connected they're into our ecosystem, the more they're going to be using some of our settings. Like if you mute or block a player, if you're having an unwanted conversation, you can choose to do that, and that'll carry over to a lot of games.
To the games,
okay. To the games, yes. But there's a lot of games that themselves have settings. So Fortnite is a great example of, they give you the option of doing a Fortnite chat, which is where you're doing your audio chatting within the Fortnite game themselves, or they natively support doing the Microsoft platform chat, which would be the Xbox chat, I believe it's called in the game. I'm not sure. There's a differentiation in the game. So the settings that we have would definitely apply to the Xbox Live chat. But then you can go in and set really similar settings to apply as well into the Fortnite chat. So you're only chatting with your friends, or you can only hear specific people. And that's one where I've gone kind of back and forth with my kids of, if everybody's on Xbox, great, they can all use the chat. But if they're, playing with people who might not be like in different platforms or something, then they might need to go into a different platform. But I think the important thing to do when it comes to those games is look at their safety options and make sure that you understand what the game can do, because there's definitely different functionalities in the games themselves.
Okay, that's a really good point. Anything to add to that, Julie?
Yeah, a good resource that we often recommend parents check out is Common Sense Media. So that's a great place to go ahead and look and learn a bit more about the games. You can learn from other parents, and they'll share, what was good or what was worrying about certain games. And then just encouraging parents to talk to their kids about the specific games that they're playing, just to learn a little bit more. Ask them, are you chatting with people? What are you hearing from them, or what are you seeing? And just get a better idea, what your child is experiencing, and if they're feeling comfortable with what they see.
Okay, great. Yeah, and so I think just to, and then we'll turn it over to some questions here from our participants. But I think it sounds to me like a combination of doing your homework before your child asks, before you allow a new game to be played in your home. Do your homework. We definitely recommend that a game that's been downloaded a lot, reviewed a lot, is used a lot, is probably a little bit safer than the brand new one that so-and-so at school said I should really download because it's really fun and so on. The former is safer than the latter. And I think another step to that is using these tools that you've told us about. I think this app is going to be great. Using privacy settings, using all the security options available to you. And then I have a third, which is, I know a lot of us don't love it, but playing the games with them. No need to be an expert. I'm absolutely horrible with this device right here. It's too many buttons and involves too many things for me to do. But your children really enjoy teaching you if you choose to learn, even if you don't play it ever again after they explain it to you. But it gives you an appreciation for why they love it so much. And they're probably more willing to talk to you more about what they're experiencing as they continue to play it, if you open that conversation from the very beginning. I think anything, other things, sorry?
Oh, I was just going to say, I'll plus one on that, because my son loved
Yes.
to show me his games. And there was one time where I'm like, oh, at such and such o'clock, I'll sit down with you and play. I think it was Rayman Legends. And he was counting down. He's like, is it 2 o'clock yet? Is it 2 o'clock yet? And he was so excited. I'm like, okay, I have to do it now. Like, there's no getting out of this. But it was
Yes.
good. It was a great experience. And there's so many times we're trying to teach them and they're always the learners. Flipping it. I 1,000% agree with you. Flipping that around.
Oh, yes. Oh, it's
them.
empowering for them. Yes, the student becomes the teacher, and I think it's extremely empowering. It's really depressing for the rest of us trying to learn, and we just go, I don't understand. I can't drive this car. I don't know how to do it. Anything else you'd like to add before we open it up? We've got a few questions too coming in from the chat.
So I think the one other thing I would add, because we've talked a lot about safety and family settings, and it showed up on your poll, is also the spending limits, and that there are settings as well for making sure that you approve that people, or that your children can make purchases, or your teens. You can also give them an allotment of like, oh, hey, you have $10. I know my kids, I got them to go out and weed the garden so that they could get $10 for V-Bucks. It's interesting, different allowance type setup now. But making sure that, as you have them set up as the child accounts, there are those things as well, so that they don't just go and, spend money that you're not aware of that they're spending.
Yeah. And echoing
But
what
that's,
Jill said,
yep.
it is so important to make sure that your child is using an age appropriate account because all these safeguards that we have built, they only work with child accounts. And so making sure that your child can take advantage of all of these features that we have, like just making sure they're not using an account that is not appropriately aged is really critical.
Yeah, and I'd love to share really quickly. I think there's a couple screenshots here we can share with everybody on how to set those settings on the Xbox at the very beginning when you first start allowing your kids. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, and
So we can show
this
those
is
real
under the
quick.
right, those the Xbox family settings. Is that correct?
The family
Uh,
settings and the safety settings. Yeah.
yeah, and as as we're pulling those up, we have a question from the audience as I'm pulling this up. Is this the app, Julie, that you were talking about? Is it available in multiple countries, or when it becomes available, is it available in multiple countries?
Yep, the preview is currently available in the same supported markets that we have for Xbox. And when it's generally available, which is very soon, it'll be available in those same markets.
Okay, fantastic. And is there a cost to it?
It's
Yeah.
completely free. And that was one thing that we started out with as a basic principle, should always be completely free.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, and I'll just share here. This is the setting that everybody should do on the Xbox for each of their kids. Is that right?
Yeah, so this is just a flow of how to get into each of the kids. When you're the parent, I'm logged in as the parent account, and I go to online safety and family, and I can go all the way through to manage my members. And then, as Julie showed in the family app, clicking in on Alex, we can click on each kid and set theirs appropriately. So you'll see we have access to content the same that Julie had in the family app. And there's also support in the Xbox mobile app of if you get a new console, you can go through and do some of the setup through the mobile app and not have to wait for your console to update. So you can kind of do some at the same time. If you want to go to the next one, that's actually shows some of the actual settings. Back one. There we go. So these are not all of the settings. I just pulled a few key ones that I think parents would be really interested in. In the privacy, in the privacy area, there is the one that is for asking the parent for approval before your child buys something. So that one you'll definitely want to flip on. And then the communication for multiplayer and the friends and clubs. This is to show some of the parity that the family app is giving us that you can do on your app that you also can do on the console. Of these are the settings that as you go into those safety settings, you can say who can they communicate with and at what level and who gets blocked and are the parents notified or have to approve friends.
Okay. Okay, that's fantastic. Yeah, I think I need to do some homework tonight and take a look at our settings. And also, I did download the app, but I need to actually use it to its
And
fullest
I'll do
extent.
one.
Yeah.
I'll do one plug as a parent, not as a Microsoft employee, but as a parent who has been using the app for the last few months. I haven't been as focused on the hours, but I've been really focused on what their bedtimes are and when it needs to shut down on them. And the fact that they get the notifications, like you've got 5 minutes left, or you have a half hour, whatever the pop-ups are, has actually helped with the fights of don't turn it off. I'm almost done with this level, or I just started. If they know they have that amount left, most of the time they're like, okay, I'm done. If they're really in the middle of something, they'll ask for more time. But it really takes it out of me having to threaten to turn the Xbox off. It puts it more in their control of they can figure out what a good stopping point is. And so I just want to make that plug because as a parent, that has been huge because there's been times where there's been high frustration levels and I go over and I hit that button and that's the worst thing you can do to a kid is just shut it down in the middle of their gameplay.
Yeah, that's right. We do have a question. It looks like the app is not available in the United Arab Emirates. Any plans to have it soon? Welcome, whoever's calling in from UAE. Any plans on that?
I don't have an answer to that, but I can get back to you. I need to check with our marketing team to see what our expansion plans are for further markets.
Okay, fantastic. I mean, it sounds like there'll be a lot of takers. Certainly on my end for sure. So I think, if I encourage you to send in questions, but I think we're just about out of time here. And if you have additional questions, please reach out to us at internet_safety@trendmicro.com, and we will reach out to Jill and Julie for any questions you might have after today, after you've given some of these the settings and the app a try. I thank you so much for joining us today, Jill and Julie, all the way from not as smoky anymore, the Seattle area in Washington.
Thank goodness.
And yes.
Okay.
Hopefully that's not going to be, hopefully we'll be in a better place soon. And I want to encourage everybody to join us next week as we continue, sorry, not next week. I think this is going to be 2 weeks from now, sorry, for our next session for the Managing Family Life Online series, which is Wednesday, October 7th at 3 p.m. Eastern. We'll be joined by Chanel Curry, who is founder and CEO of Media Done Responsibly. We're going to talk about social media and how actually to use it to further social causes and to teach our kids and role model that for our kids. So that should be a great session. Thanks again, Jill and Julie, for your time today. I want to thank everybody who joined us as participants. Again, we encourage you to take a look at internetsafety.trendmicro.com. If you do, at the end of the call today, you are going to be led to a survey. If you enter if you choose to enter your email address in addition to any feedback for us, you might actually win a free copy of Trend Micro Maximum Security for a year, and that covers up to 5 devices in your home. So please do give us the feedback. We want to know, what can we do better? What can we keep on doing that's helpful to you? Thanks, everybody, and we will see you at our next webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you.